my section. It does do a good job calling out like the ethical concerns of that time period of like, what should we do for fame? And should it be this? And the answer is usually no. And it kind of just ties back into like capitalism makes you do crappy things. Like if we think of even the organization he was a part of, which I'll talk about a little bit, like you have to be of a certain economic bracket to be a part of that group or famous enough to be a part of that group. And like, what are you exchanging for that wealth and fame? So yeah, it all comes back to like, what would you do? Whose souls would you sell for fame? And what better a time to talk about that? Like I watched the Satan Wants You documentary, which is from 2023, which is all about the Michelle Remembers book and like her life and like how shady all that was that went down, and honestly like how sad it was. So we'll talk about that, but it's all the storyline of what happened in Michelle Remembers, like the lead up to that, and our main character in Late Night with the Devil, very similar vibes. They just really wanted to be famous. The Late Night with the Devil highlights the ethically questionable day and nighttime TV shows where care for those on the show goes out the window for ratings. Delroy was literally willing to do anything to reach fame. And in my research, I actually, as I said, watched Satan Wants You, which gives a lot of context to that of what we see unfold in Late Night with the Devil. Similar to Late Night, Satan Wants You discusses the impacts of late night TV and daytime TV in spreading satanic panic. It would not be what it was without that influence. Additionally, it highlights the highly inappropriate relationship between doctor and patient. Both the film and the documentary do that. And the documentary covers, it was big yikes. And it's like, it's definitely calling out the Michelle's Remembers person just with a different
without being
framework.
Like, gross. Yeah.
Yeah. It was, they made it like less problematic, but still problematic. The real story is hella problematic. So the documentary covers Michelle Remembers' book and the drama behind it that lit the fire for satanic panic. We also see throughout the documentary how specifically talk shows furthered the book's ratings and selling of it. And the book Michelle Remembers is a controversial memoir. We talked about it, as Gabe said, in our Maxine episode, but just to give you a quick rundown in case you missed that one, that gained notoriety in the 1980s. It was co-authored by Michelle Smith and her psychiatrist, Dr. Lawrence Pazder. And the book details Michelle's alleged experiences of horrific satanic ritual abuse, including the slaughter of animal and babies. However, the ethical implications of this book's creation and its impact on individuals and society have been widely questioned, in that it's problematic and sus. So essentially, the birth of the satanic panic was formed with false memories and caused a rise in psychiatrists and therapists manipulating people to uproot false memories, just like was done to Michelle. So Satan Wants You provides a compelling look at the satanic panic that swept the 1980s and 90s. The documentary covers the book and many of the other victims of alleged satanic ritual abuse. And Michelle's claims led to lasting consequences, both in their respective families, but also as like society as a whole. So Michelle, before meeting Dr. Pazner, had no thoughts of being abused by a satanic cult. None, not a day in her life. She had, however, recently, unfortunately, had a miscarriage, which she was feeling reasonably depressed about, and sought help from Dr. Pazner for his expertise. And after meeting with him a few times, they did like, what's it called? Hypnosis, kind of like how the guy did in the show. And suddenly, she claimed to have been subjected to horrific satanic ritual abuse, including the slaughter of animal and baby. There's like really awful stuff. And there's like tapes upon tapes of recordings of her just screaming and like conveying this to him. But her psychiatrist, Lawrence Pazner, encouraged these claims, basically exploiting Michelle's vulnerability and using hypnosis essentially to implant these false memories. Quickly, their relationship became inappropriate. So after some of their early sessions in the documentary, Pastor's wife mentions her husband watching the movie Sybil. For those of you who don't know, Sybil was a TV movie based on the book Sybil by Flora Retta Schreiber, about a woman with multiple personality disorder. In the film adaptation, they show how as a child, Sybil experienced extensive abuse at the hands of her mother. And Pastor's wife recalls after watching that film, her husband turning to her and saying, "I want to do that, but with psychiatry. That I want to be famous like that." And then he had a patient that would be perfect for that, just like Sybil, except they weren't, because they don't have DID. They just also possibly experienced childhood trauma. So it seems very possible that he could have manipulated Michelle into experiencing what she did for his own gain through hypnosis and other methods. And I'll get into what those other methods were. So several factors contributed to the credibility of Michelle's claims, specifically, or the lack of credibility. So they both had very strong religious beliefs. Both Michelle and Pastor were deeply religious, which made their claims more appealing to a religiously conservative audience. A friend of Michelle's describes her as a Puritan. Very religious.
Comes full circle.
Yeah, full circle. And Dr. Pastor was devoutly Catholic and active in their church. So he had also taken missionary trips to Africa. This comes up a lot in the documentary because he has a lot of problematic and frankly racist views against the people he was there helping.
They're a secret organization, they're a secret society. A secret society does not reveal the identity of the people or the ways of their practices. I was familiar with this type of society firsthand in Africa, practicing general medicine there. And if one of the members of that society revealed who he was killed instantly.
And as an additional fun fact,
White savior.
the nuns at the missionary location he traveled to did not like him. They called him evil and told him he should leave. So it just gives you a little insight into, like, is he good Catholic, bad Catholic, bad Catholic? He also did hypnosis. So Pastor uses hypnosis to recover Michelle's memories, a technique that has been shown to be unreliable and can lead to the creation of false memories. So essentially you're stressing them out to the point with, like, the context that they have. Since they were deeply religious, the context that they both had and were framing this around was, like, deeply religious, based on, like, horrific hell Bible like things. So, and additionally, media attention, the sensational nature of Michelle's claims led to widespread media coverage. She was, like, on a bunch of talk shows. Oprah called her and asked her to come. Like, you know, like, it was, like, really, everyone wanted Michelle to come on to talk about this, which further fueled the satanic panic. And she appeared on many daytime and nighttime TV shows promoting the book, speaking on her experiences. And honestly, most of the time, Dr. Pastor leading the charge throughout. He did most of the talking. She just was like, that is real.
Yep.
Also, they both gained a lot of money from this book. Essentially, both Michelle and Pastor profited from the book. They wrote about Michelle's experiences, which were heavily promoted by the Catholic Church.
Classic.
The Catholic Church decided to subsidize the book, and seemingly using it as a way to revitalize religious fervor. As you know, kids don't want to go to church no more.
Now there's a big enemy.
So in recorded conversations, they mentioned that the church thought the book would make them $1 million. And the church was operating as a business using Michelle's book as marketing. The Pope even was like, yeah.
Not at all.
Let me meet with her. They
surprised.
met with them and were like, yeah, let's make this happen. And that's why he wrote the foreword for the book. It's just very propaganda vibes. They all had a lot of motive to deceive people. Everyone, like, honestly, except Michelle, until we get into this part. So there were serious flaws in Michelle's claims, conflicting evidence. Essentially, Michelle's family and friends disputed her claims of abuse also, and provided evidence that contradicted her story. So specifically in it, like in the documentary and in the book, she's like, I saw the Virgin Mary and she came to me and spoke French to me, and I didn't speak French. I've never spoken French a day in my life. I don't know how I understood what she was saying to me. And she called herself ma mère, and she was speaking French to her. And I don't even know how I was able to recollect that. Like, she was, like, really selling it. But Pastor's ex-wife found evidence, essentially, because essentially Pastor left his wife for Michelle down the line. So his ex-wife found evidence of Michelle being in school during the time. And then her sister was also like, did high school French and won an award because she was so good at French. And also our great grandfather spoke French fluently and she was often talking to him.
Yeah.
So just lies. It's all fine.
Yeah. Why would the Virgin Mary be speaking French?
I don't know.
She didn't know French? What?
Because she didn't know Latin. It would be too convenient.
Yeah.
You know?
That's fair. Mm-hmm.
And then essentially there's a very exploitative relationship between Michelle and Pastor. So the inappropriate and exploitative relationship between Michelle and Pastor raised concerns about the validity of their claims. They had a really inappropriate and not healthy relationship. The family of Dr. Pastor spoke of her calling constantly and following them on family trips. And Michelle's friends described their relationship as her being deeply in love with him. This is like before they even got together. So during their sessions, there was also documentation that in order for the therapy to work, he would have to hold her, like her hands, spoon with her, and other forms of affection. And it would make sense that in exchange for this affection she was receiving, with the understanding that she is like deeply in love with him, that her sensationalizing these claims would give her rewards from him. So she had motive to continue to do this because that would continue his interest. He was so into this because he saw it as a pathway to fame. So like her making these claims and like really playing it up made him love her more and give her more attention. So she really like grabbed onto that theoretically. It also resulted in like closeness and affection, as I said, like attention and interest. So he had many points seem to encourage her attachment as well, especially in inappropriate situations. In sessions to recover Michelle's memories, they worked for months, often spending 8 hours a day together holding sessions. And in the sessions, according to photographs that they released literally in People magazine, Michelle would be shirtless and holding on to Dr. Pastor on the ground, like basically spooning. Yeah, it's super gross. And during sessions, you can also hear like auditory cues because like they record everything. And her like asking, like, can you come here? Like, let me hold on to you. Is that fine? Like in the intro sessions. And then like all the future ones, they're like on top of each other. So after the release of the book and also the release of the photos, both Michelle and Pastor got divorced from their partners because they were both married. And essentially got married to each other. So it's just like, yeah, there's a lot of sus stuff that went on with the book that just suggests that like not everything's above board. It seems highly manipulated. I'm not saying like, I think there is a possibility that Michelle experienced some kind of abuse, but in a different way. It wasn't satanic ritual abuse at the end of the day. And if anything, this experience was probably more most abusing to her. Because it was very exploitative of her and her like vulnerability, and like he just largely profited off of her pain. So why is that relevant? Because it sparked literally tons and tons and tons of copycat cases. Basically, she was like in consulting for the McMartin preschool case.
Child molesting cases ever on record. 7 nursery school teachers were arraigned today on more than 100 counts of child molestation.
It's like they were like going all around. They were speaking at police, what is it called? Conferences. Yeah, and like psychiatric conferences, teaching people how to recognize satanic ritual abuse. Like like everyone was treating it like it was fact. Like no one questioned them, and anyone who did was called a Satanist. So it was like a whole thing. It was like the witch hunt would activate because anyone who was like, no, that actually seems really weird. We shouldn't do that. Was like claimed to be a Satanist, and that's like not what you wanted, because you could literally go to jail. There are people who like served time in prison who were innocent and like shouldn't have been there. So it basically continues on where the Satanic Panic basically fueled lots of other people coming forward. There was one case that she sued the therapist for like $1 million and won, because he basically did the same thing where they would spend therapists were like incentivized essentially to exploit people
Mm-hmm.
because they could charge 8-hour sessions and get tons of money with these people and like convince them that they had been abused in a satanic cult. And then that would like further the talk show appearances and like other books that came out that were just people who were manipulated by people who wanted money, who wanted
Mm-hmm.
their chance at fame. So essentially, after that happened, you had what you would never think that this would be the savior of the end of satanic panic, but it was actually insurance companies that said, I don't want to pay for this anymore.
Yeah.
There's no factual evidence that this is like, it's not in the DSM-5. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like, there's no reason we should be covering
That's hilarious.
therapy for satanic ritual abuse because I don't believe you, essentially.
Mm.
And the doctor mentions at many points that without the pushing of the shows, the book would likely not have gained as much traction or impacted as many people. And unfortunately, many hosts and networks are willing to sell their souls for ratings and other people's souls, ultimately. So that ties in perfectly to, thank you, Gabe, for collecting this for me. Sell your soul for Sweeps Week. Essentially going over, like, what did Delroy do?
Mm-hmm.
What club was he in that got him real close with Satan, you know? And Jack Delroy's deal with the devil is the driving force in the film, pushing the narrative into supernatural chaos. Despite desperate to save his sinking career, Jack makes a Faustian bargain that leads to terrifying consequences. And his bargain is made through the Grove, a secret society of rich and famous men who desire more riches and larger fame, which is based on a real thing.
Mm-hmm.
Which is bonkers. So the film's cult is inspired by the real Bohemian Grove, often referred to as the Cult de Grove, a private all-male club attended by some of the world's most powerful men, started by a group of journalists in 1872 and expanded to include those in power, including 4 Republican presidents, Herbert Hoover, Richard Nixon, Ronald Reagan, and George H.W. Bush, and also Clarence Thomas,
Mm-hmm. I saw that
the
recently.
Supreme Court Justice. So gross.
Makes a lot of sense.
Yeah. And the group is highly secretive, so like the actual member list is actually pretty hard to find. There's also like rumor that before the atomic bomb was created, they had the first meeting and discussions about it at the Bohemian Grove. So in an article on CBR about the real group, which inspired Delroy's own coven, Late Night with the Devil is inspired by a real-life secret society, and the details are horrifying. They share information on the club's secretive nature, elaborate rituals, and high-profile memberships, which have made it the subject of much speculation and conspiracy theories. Writer Philip Weiss infiltrated the group with members of an anti-Grove Bohemian Grove Action Network and discuss the findings in an article for Spy Magazine. There is like literally, if you go on the Bohemian Grove website, they have like a list of like what they do while they're
Mm-hmm.
there. And one of the things is like a play called The Cremation of Care. It's like a ceremony. And in particular has garnered significant attention because the Cremation of Care ceremony involved the burning of an effigy called Care in front of a large owl statue.
Mm-hmm.
Symbolizing the release of the members' worldly burdens, which it's like...
We see that in the film. There's a big owl.
Yeah, there's a big owl and you're like, whoa, what? But like also like how appropriate of a rich group of people
To burn Care.
To burn Care. That's how you earn your wealth, is by burning Care. It's
Mm-hmm.
by you don't care about anyone but yourself.
Just literal at this point.
Yeah. So it's just like... poor taste.
Mm.
Ultimately, the ceremony is theatrical and elaborate, featuring a procession, music, and speeches. And while it is intended to be a symbolic act of liberation, the secretive nature of the Bohemian Grove has led to various interpretations and conspiracy theories about the true meaning and purpose of the ritual. And Weiss, in his reporting, quoted that the owl statue, which plays a recording during the ceremony of Walter Cronkite, a member, saying, "Fools! When will ye learn that me ye cannot slay? Year after year ye burn me in this grove. But when again ye turn your feet towards the marketplace, am I not waiting for you as of old?"
White people and rich people just like are so weird. Like they play that and and it's genuine. Like, they could make a joke that it's silly. It's not. They're being real. They're an occult.
And while some view Bohemian Grove as a place where the global elite gather to discuss world events, why they shouldn't even be doing that. Others see it as a private retreat for relaxation and networking. Regardless of the perspective, Bohemian Grove remains a symbol of power and secrecy in modern culture, and Jack's journey and involvement in the Grove serves as a cautionary tale about the perils of unchecked ambition and the dark side of chasing success at any cost. And it's just like one thing it's just like gross ultimately. But I also figured out where it was. It was the Manhattan Project in 1942 held their first meeting about the atomic bomb at the Grove. And then also basically everyone was like freaking out about Satan because of Anton LaVey and his book, The Satanic Bible, which actually sued the book Michelle Remembers because they mention the Church of Satan a bunch of times. And basically he sued them for defamation.
Yeah.
And won. And they had to remove all references in like newer releases of the Church of Satan because they had no evidence that the Church of Satan was doing anything that they were saying.
Unrelated. A different Church of Satan.
Yeah.
It's like the Lutheran version.
Yeah. So messy, ultimately.
Yeah, but that was another episode of our Satanic Panic series. Tell us what you think about Late Night with the Devil. What's your favorite late night talk show host? Is it Jack Delroy? Did he deserve to top the charts? Yeah, tell us about your favorite Satanic Panic-y movies. We might be covering them. And remember to like and subscribe to help us out. And because they're doing spooky stuff. It's the month of spooky, so
if any time you tell us you love us, it's now.
Yeah, send comments and stuff. But
cool.
Don't get married.
Delete your kids.